On a chilly autumn evening, I sat by the window, gazing at the fallen maple leaves in the garden. The maple leaves danced in the wind, and the children passing by seemed eagerly awaiting Thanksgiving Day tomorrow. My name is Madison Brown, and I am 23 years old. For the past 5 years, I have lived with my father, my stepmother Kathy, and my stepbrother Chris. My biological mother passed away when I was 16, in the spring. Amidst fluttering petals, she succumbed after a long illness. In her final moments, she clasped my hand and whispered with a raspy voice, "Be happy." Those words have guided me ever since. My memories with my mother remain vivid in my mind even now. We used to bake chiffon cake together for Sunday snacks. Wrapped in the sweet aroma wafting from the oven, we would talk passionately as we waited for the cake to bake. I remember her gentle gaze when she helped me with my homework, encouraging me with, "It's okay to make mistakes," and the way the Christmas lights brightened her smile as we decorated together. More than anything, her warm presence, always there to listen when I needed it, remains vivid in my memory. After my mother's death, the atmosphere at home changed drastically. My father, devastated, would spend long hours in front of her portrait, and eventually, he buried himself in work as if to distract himself from the pain. Unable to cope with my loss, I immersed myself in my studies. As a result, our interactions dwindled, and a profound silence enveloped our home. About a year later, when I was 17, my father abruptly announced his remarriage to Kathy. I was taken aback, unable to comprehend how he could welcome someone new so soon after losing my mother. Kathy, a colleague from my father's company who knew my mother well, stirred complex feelings within me. The uncertainty and confusion about how this marriage would change our home weighed heavily on me. Yet, I tried to wish for my father's happiness, despite the lingering unease in my heart. Everything moved swiftly with Kathy. My father met her at a company social event and decided to marry her within 3 months. Before I knew it, Kathy and her son Chris, a brilliant student 2 years older than me attending a prestigious vocational school, were living with us. Initially, things seemed to go well. Kathy played the perfect housewife, preparing elaborate meals, keeping the house immaculate, and impressing at neighborhood gatherings as the exemplary wife. The dinner table was always vibrant with delicious dishes, and she would smile gently whenever I enjoyed my favorite foods. Chris played the role of a considerate stepbrother, helping me with my studies and offering career advice. "You can always count on me," he'd say, slowly earning my trust. My father was content, and a calm atmosphere prevailed at home. However, beneath the surface of our seemingly tranquil days, I felt something was amiss. There was a subtle discomfort behind Kathy's smile and a slight coldness in her gestures towards me compared to her warmth towards my father. Chris's kindness, while apparently sincere, seemed to scrutinize my reactions, adding to my unease. And in my father's absence, an indescribable stillness filled the air. The subtle coldness in Kathy's voice when she spoke to me, and the discomfort of Chris silently using his phone on the sofa made me feel stifled, despite the outward calm. Despite these feelings, I tried to ignore them, telling myself this was our new family dynamic. When Kathy suggested moving my mother's photos to a less conspicuous place in the house, I couldn't accept it. "Let's move them somewhere less visible," she said, but I firmly refused. "No, these are precious memories of my mother, and I want to keep them here," I insisted. "But going forward," she began, only for me to cut her off sharply. "Don't take away my memories of my mother. Without these, I feel like I'd have nothing left." Eventually, she agreed to leave the photos in my room. Looking at the pictures of my mother smiling at me felt like she was saying, "It's all right." At night, when I couldn't sleep, I'd talk to her photo in my mind. "Am I doing okay?" I'd ask, and although no answer came, somehow it soothed my heart. Preparations for Thanksgiving Day went on as usual. Kathy was busy from morning with the turkey and meat pies, while Chris went out to watch a soccer game with friends. My father was tied up with work calls in his study, and I quietly spent the day looking through my mother's keepsake album. The Thanksgiving dinner unfolded under Kathy's perfect direction. The table was laden with a golden-baked turkey, homemade meat pies, and various pumpkin dishes, looking like something out of a culinary magazine. "This year's turkey is special," Kathy declared proudly, having prepped it for 24 hours. My father smiled warmly. "It's a wonderful meal," he praised. Kathy smiled happily, saying, "I'm glad everyone enjoyed it." Chris chimed in, "Mom's cooking is the best." I felt out of place, as if I was the only one sensing something off in this seemingly ideal family dinner. A feeling that something was being hidden stirred unease within me. After the meal, as everyone retreated to their rooms, I felt a thirst and noted it was past midnight. Just as I started down the stairs, I overheard Kathy and Chris's voices from the living room. They spoke in hushed tones filled with urgency, different from their usual demeanor, probably thinking I was asleep. A chill ran down my spine, and I instinctively paused, holding my breath to listen. Approaching the living room, their voices became clearer. "We need to drive her out of this house before the will is finalized." Kathy's voice sliced through the silent night air. I gasped at her icy words. "As long as she's here, we can't proceed with our plans." Kathy's voice held no hesitation. My heart began to race uncontrollably. Something was terribly wrong. I trembled as I pulled out my smartphone, frantically activating the recording app. My heart pounded as I confirmed the recording had started. Exactly. At that moment I was shocked. The voice of Chris, who usually interacted with me as a gentle and calm brother, was tinged with a cruel tone. "We can't let her inherit equally. Dad's assets are vast, but sharing them is out of the question. She seems to have started job hunting." Kathy continued, her voice cunning as if plotting. "Let's make sure she can't use the car for interviews. We could hide the keys or break down that old car for some reason. I can sabotage her computer too," Chris suggested. "If she can't access job sites, her options will dwindle. She might give up and leave on her own if we push her enough. But we should avoid being too obvious," Kathy calculated. "Moving too fast might make her suspicious. We need to corner her gradually, making her feel like she has no place here until she decides to leave on her own. Indeed, we should avoid noticeable actions. It would be bad if the neighbors start noticing." Chris agreed quietly. "Let's spread rumors among her friends and acquaintances. Say she's a quitter who can't hold a job, or a troublemaker who causes conflicts. If we undermine her credibility, she'll lose her place in no time." I sensed Kathy's smirk. "That works. Even if she gets a job, we can spread a little misunderstanding. If she feels isolated at work, she'll break down. Once she loses her pride, she'll give up on everything." As I listened to their conversation from the top of the stairs, a chilling sensation gripped me, and I struggled to contain my shivers. The pieces of my previous discomfort and minor incidents were then connected. Kathy had been spreading rumors about my job hunting. Chris had attempted to check my computer under pretense. It was all a calculated plan. Their conversation continued for over 30 minutes, discussing the details of my father's assets, various schemes to exclude me, and their future ambitions. Clutching the smartphone that recorded everything, I struggled to maintain my composure. My palms were sweaty, my heart felt like it might burst, but what could I do with this recording? I had no idea how to stop their plans. Then, my mother's words came to mind. "Have the courage to do the right thing." Her encouragement, often repeated during my childhood challenges, seemed to comfort me now. In the cold room, her warm voice seemed the only thing supporting me. After finishing the recording, I clutched the smartphone tightly and returned to my room. I locked the door, finally allowing myself to breathe. I collapsed onto the bed, staring blankly at the ceiling. Despite wanting to clear my mind, thoughts kept swirling relentlessly. For the past 5 years, I had tried desperately to build a relationship with my new family. When my father remarried, I had made every effort to be accepted by Kathy and her son Chris, my new family. But it was a futile effort from the start. Their cold looks and sharp words hidden in casual remarks still, I had believed that understanding would come with time and maintained a constant smile, which now seemed foolish. Looking out the window, the full moon peeked through the clouds. The white light seemed as if my mother was watching over me, gently illuminating my heart with its serene glow. "Mom," I whispered softly. "What I'm about to do, it's the right thing, isn't it?" The voice sounded like I was reassuring myself. Anxiety and conflict surged within me, but the memory of my mother's words kindled a faint courage in me. As I waited for dawn, I replayed the recording over and over. Each time, Kathy and Chris's voices pierced my heart with new thorns, like venomous bees attacking repeatedly, stirring anger and sadness within me. To have the courage to do the right thing, I pondered, could it be this painful? As the night began to fade, the first light of dawn cast a pale orange glow into the room, signaling a new beginning. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes to steady the shaking, and then opened them with resolve. "I'll just do what needs to be done," I muttered to myself, gripping my smartphone firmly. Although my heart still wavered, I knew there was no turning back. I called my father at exactly 7 a.m., just after he had left the house. I made the call from my room, making sure no one would notice. Despite being busy on his way to work, he sensed something in my tone and responded immediately. "Dad." My voice trembled, unable to hide my anxiety. "I need to meet with you outside, right away." "It's very important." After a brief silence, he replied. "Understood. Let's meet at our usual spot." The meeting place was a cafe called Roast Toast, a place our family often visited when my mother was alive. The nostalgic scent of coffee filled the cafe, and soft morning light streamed through the windows. That evening, after work, my father and I met there. He looked impeccable in his suit, though there were faint signs of fatigue under his eyes. Still, his manner of sipping black coffee, a gesture so familiar, hadn't changed. He always used to stop by this cafe during breaks in his busy work schedule to enjoy a moment of peace. My father set down his coffee and looked at me quietly. His eyes were the same as always, sharp yet warm. Then he simply asked, "So, what's this important matter?" I sat across from him, took a deep breath. "I want you to listen to this." I took out my smartphone. "It's something I recorded last night." As the recording played, my father's expression shifted from confusion to surprise, and then to a mix of deep sadness and anger. His gestures, occasionally furrowing his brows or pressing his lips tightly, conveyed the turmoil swirling within him. When the recording ended, a heavy silence hung in the air, the quiet music of the cafe feeling distant due to the tension. "Madison." My father finally spoke quietly. "You did well to record this. And thank you for telling me right away." His voice was low but carried a profound gravity. His eyes met mine directly, not just with gratitude but with a resolve to protect me. "Honestly, I feel like throwing them out right now," he continued, clenching his fist lightly. "But that would not be wise. Getting emotional would only give them an opportunity to exploit. We need to gather evidence first and thoroughly investigate their actions." My father believed me. His words slightly eased the tension that had been building up inside me. "Madison, you have done enough." He lifted his coffee cup with a tone that seemed to reassure himself. For a moment he looked down at his cup, then back at me. His eyes mixed a usual calm with a hint of regret and sorrow. "Madison," he continued quietly, exhaling, "I didn't realize how much you were suffering. I used work as an excuse and overlooked the changes in my own daughter." His voice sounded pained. I could tell my serious and responsible father was blaming himself. "I'm truly sorry," he said, setting down the coffee cup and looking directly into my eyes. "But now that I'm aware, leave it to me. I'll make sure to protect you, Madison." With those words, the tears I had been holding back finally spilled over. My father's regret, mixed with his love for me and his determination to protect me from now on, made me feel deeply reassured of his reliability. "Dad," I managed to call out with a trembling voice. "Thanks to you taking that brave step forward, we can start taking action. You're not alone anymore, so you can feel safe." My father's words gently wrapped around my solitary days, lighting a small beacon of hope in my heart. "It would be best if you moved to your grandmother's house starting today," my father said calmly as he began to lay out a specific plan. "Let's say it's to take care of your grandmother who's fallen ill. Actually, she has been worried about her age, and she'll definitely be happy having you live with her. Considering your safety, this is the best choice. I'll hire a private detective to thoroughly investigate their actions." "But Dad," I asked, worried, "do you have enough money? Hiring a detective is expensive, isn't it?" My father chuckled softly, leaning back in his chair. "Don't worry. This is a necessary expense. I wouldn't spare any cost to keep you safe." He paused, looking down quietly before continuing. "Besides, I have a duty to make up for my lack of judgment." Later that afternoon, I quickly packed the essential sentimental items, important documents, and my mother's photographs. I informed Kathy and Chris that I was moving to take care of my grandmother, whose health had supposedly worsened. Well, that's tough. Kathy pretended to be concerned, but her eyes clearly sparkled with joy. "But taking care of the elderly, you are such a kind-hearted girl, Madison." "Indeed, very admirable," Chris agreed. "If you need help, I'm here too." Watching their performances, I felt something inside me freeze. Was this truly family? The way of family my mother taught me was not like this. The detective agency my father hired, Hansen Detective Office, was one of the best in the city for investigation capabilities. The chief detective, Sam Hansen, a veteran with 30 years of experience, was especially skilled in investigating financial fraud. "First, we'll look into all financial transactions over the past 5 years," Sam explained in our first meeting. "Then, we'll thoroughly check Kathy and Chris's backgrounds." The investigation proceeded around the clock. Detectives took turns surveilling our house and documenting Kathy and Chris's activities. At the same time, they delved into their past records. Once a week, my father received updates from Sam. I was sometimes allowed to sit in on these meetings. Each time we read the reports, my father's expression grew darker. "Kathy has been married twice before," Sam reported. "Both were to wealthy businessmen, and she received a substantial settlement at each divorce. Particularly concerning is that her second husband declared bankruptcy shortly after their divorce. There's also troubling information about her son," the report continued. "There are suspicions that he swindled a large amount of money from a previous stepfather. The evidence has been destroyed, but according to witnesses at the time. The most shocking part was the ongoing fraud. Kathy and Chris had started withdrawing small amounts from my father's account soon after the marriage. While the amounts were small individually, they added up to a significant sum over 5 years. And what's more serious is this. Sam showed a document. There are traces of loans taken out with forged signatures of Mr. Brown at multiple banks." My father stared at the document silently for a long time. Watching him, I felt a deep ache in my heart. He must have been painfully aware of his previous oversight. Life at my grandmother's house turned out to be more healing than I expected. The house, dating back to the old era, was filled with a nostalgic atmosphere. My grandmother, though 83, was still vigorous. She watered the flowers in the garden every morning and knitted in her favorite chair in the afternoon. Gradually, I found myself blending into her tranquil daily routine. "Your mother used to spend a lot of time here when she was young," my grandmother told me one day, showing me an old album. She particularly liked this chair. She loved reading books. Looking at photos of my mother as a young university student, serious while studying, and on her first date with my father, I discovered facets of her I never knew. It was a life of my mother's that I never knew, yet it undoubtedly existed. Your mother was a strong woman. My grandmother quietly told me. No matter how tough things got, she never gave up. You really do resemble her. Those words gave me great courage. Until now, I had been consumed by overcoming my mother's death and felt I had lost sight of what she had passed on to me. But now, I could feel her strength flowing within me. The seasons turned, and Thanksgiving Day was approaching once again. Over the past year, my father had steadily gathered evidence and prepared legally. He had also consulted repeatedly with his lawyer, Robert Thompson, devising a perfect plan. The best timing would be after the Thanksgiving dinner. Robert had suggested, revealing the facts when the family is gathered will make the subsequent legal proceedings smoother. On Thanksgiving Day, I felt a heaviness in my stomach from the morning. Like last year, Kathy was busy preparing an extravagant meal. The scent of roasted turkey filled the house, and traditional Thanksgiving dishes like pumpkin pie were laid out on the table one after another. This year's dinner will be special, Kathy said proudly. Only my father and I knew the true meaning behind her words. Dinner began, and the familiar scene unfolded. My father carved the turkey, Chris poured wine, and Kathy served the other dishes. On the surface, it was the perfect picture of family togetherness. As dessert time approached, my father quietly began, "Kathy, Chris, there's something we need to discuss." They looked at him, unaware of what was coming. Slowly, my father opened his business bag and began to take out documents one by one. The first thing he pulled out was the audio recording from last year's Thanksgiving night. Kathy's face drained of color. Next came bank transaction records and evidence of forged signatures. Then, the detailed investigative report from the detective. Everything was spread out on the table. "What is all this?" Kathy asked with a trembling voice. "You should understand without having to be explained," my father said calmly. "Here we have all the evidence of what you two have done." Chris suddenly stood up, shouting, "This is a misunderstanding." But his voice already bore the tone of defeat. A misunderstanding. My father asked Esily, "What exactly is misunderstood here?" "The forged signatures. The unauthorized withdrawals from my account." The atmosphere froze. Kathy tried one last time to defend herself, her face contorting slightly. "You're doubting us? After all these 5 years we've—" "Those 5 years were a lie," I said quietly but firmly. "I learned of your true nature during the night of last year's Thanksgiving." The room was enveloped in a heavy silence. Kathy and Chris were at a loss for words, their faces pale. What followed was swifter than expected. My father's legal team, utilizing their years of experience, efficiently organized the vast evidence and progressed with legal procedures. Financial records, forged documents, and recorded conversations, these decisive pieces of evidence made the court proceedings smooth. Kathy and Chris initially cried and desperately denied the facts, trying every means to defend themselves. However, they were powerless against the evidence. Particularly damning was the revelation of their past fraudulent activities. It was proven that they had repeatedly deceived others using similar methods and stolen assets. When these facts were read in court, Kathy turned pale, and Chris looked down, trembling. The court handed down a harsh verdict. They were ordered to return all unlawfully obtained money and pay substantial damages. Additionally, they both received criminal records for fraud, completely destroying their social credibility. Their lives changed drastically. Forced to move from a luxury apartment to a cramped flat, the luxuries they had once taken for granted became unreachable. Chris struggled to find work. His criminal record for fraud prevented him from securing decent employment, and he moved from one part-time job to another. Having never seriously worked before, he lacked the endurance for long hours and low wages. Yet, he had no other choice in his current situation. As for Kathy, she was forced into a life of solitude and modesty, starkly opposite to her previous glamorous existence. The luxury goods Kathy once splurged on, the fine dining at high-end restaurants, and the extravagant vacation trips are now nothing more than a distant dream. Even in her small apartment kitchen, she managed to cook efficiently, but there was no one to share her meals with. Once her criminal record became known, her former friends started avoiding her, and now she is completely out of touch with them. The reality of being shunned by everyone was a profound humiliation for Kathy. Why did this happen to us? This was something I heard from an acquaintance about Kathy later on. Her tone contained more anger and lamentation at the injustice she felt than any real remorse. It seemed she still did not think their actions were wrong. Meanwhile, my father decided to sell our house. "This house is filled with too many memories, both good and bad," he said, as he quietly signed the paperwork. "Let's start a new life in a new place." Now, our family lives in a new home in the suburbs. The life I share with my father and grandmother is quiet and serene, yet filled with warmth. The wounds of the past haven't completely healed. However, knowing the truth and seeing justice served has allowed us to start moving forward gradually. Sometimes, my father says to me, "I am truly grateful for your courage, Madison. If I hadn't recorded that evidence on that Thanksgiving night and consulted him immediately, our situation today would have been entirely different." Now my mother's photo is displayed prominently in the living room. It seems to watch over us, symbolizing the heart of where our family gathers. Occasionally, I speak to her picture. "Mom, I managed to have the courage to do the right thing." And next week, another Thanksgiving Day will arrive. This time, we can truly celebrate with gratitude. With my father, myself, and my grandmother, I am now certain of what a real family looks like. Life sometimes moves in unexpected directions. Yet, if you live honestly and with courage, you will always see the light. This is the most important lesson I've learned through these experiences. The words my mother said at the end, "Be happy," still live on in my heart. And I am convinced that now, having overcome these experiences, we are truly starting to walk toward real happiness.